Hey there, it's Matt from Boise Black Rifle, and I am out here at the Parma Rod and Gun Club in Parma, Idaho today with this Springfield Echelon. This is going to be the first shots through this gun today. The optic that's on there has not been zeroed. Gun has not been fired by us. Springfield probably test fired it, but other than that, this gun has not been shot. I have both magazines out here for it, the flush fitting 17 rounder and then the extended 20 rounder. This is just going to be a kind of first shots, first thoughts video on the Echelon. There's been a lot of videos out there. A lot of guys really like it. Some guys are having some issues with it, one of them being with the extended base plate magazines. Some other guys have some other minor complaints about them, the slide release being one of them. I think looking at the gun just from playing with them in the store, I think the biggest complaint is going to be from people who have smaller hands. I'm not one of those people because when I reach up to get the slide release, my thumb knuckle here lands right on the slide release. So I'm able to use it absolutely no problem. If I had to use the tip of my thumb, it's a little bit harder because the slide release on either side, slide catch, whatever you want to call it, if you use it to drop the slides like I do, people with shorter thumbs are going to potentially have an issue with it just because it is very minimal. I highly suspect eventually somebody's going to come out with an extended one. Personally, I like the smaller one. I tend to have a problem when I'm shooting. I have a high grip and the meat on my thumb here lands right on those slide releases, slide catches. And what I tend to do is the gun doesn't lock open for me on empty. So in that respect, this has got a little guard around it. I think that's going to help me. So I think there's only one thing really left to do. Let's start loading some magazines, putting some rounds through it. I do have two different loads out here. I've got Remington Range 115 grain ball, and I've got CCI Blazer Brass 124 grain ball. Just gonna be putting a few rounds through this gun. Then I'm gonna be zeroing the optic and give you my initial thoughts. So, first couple of rounds for this, I'm just gonna be shooting into the berm because like I said, the optic hasn't, for that matter, you know what? I'll use the irons. I got a plate rack set up. You can't see it right here. So let me throw in. This is the 115 grain Remington range ammo. Let me throw my ears on so I don't do any further hearing damage. And let's see what we got here. Not the greatest shooting on my part, not the gun. I'm gonna reset that plate rack. Let's see if I can do a little better this time. So I will say this, the irons are right on. My issue is the tops of them are barely visible through the optic. Plus my eyes are gone to crap, so hence the red dot. I have a hard time focusing on iron sights. So I'm not gonna fault the gun. That's gonna be shooter issue. The more I took my time, the more I'm nailing the plates. Let me throw some of this 124 through. Again, I'm gonna reset the plate rack. Okay, first couple thoughts. I like the trigger. It is not as smooth pull through like as a SIG 320. It's not as heavy as a Glock. It's not quite as perfect, in my opinion, as a Walther PDP, but I really do like it. It's very reminiscent to me of a Glock trigger, but slightly lighter, like a good Glock trigger. It points very naturally for me. I've carried Glocks for 15 years on duty and had carried them for quite a bit after I retired. This thing points very much like my Glock. No plates. I'm just shooting into the berm right now just to try it. I like the way it shoots. So let me get this optic zeroed and then I'll run some more rounds through it. All right. Don't know how many rounds are left. Oh, only a couple. So I've gone through almost a full box of the Remington 115 grain, and I've got almost the end of the other box of the 124 CCI brass, Blazer brass, is loaded up into this mag. Thus far, no malfunctions. Everything's running smooth. I did have the slide fail to lock open. That was while I was zeroing, and I guarantee I had a funky grip because I was holding the screwdriver in my hand. So I'm not going to fault the gun on that one. But let's see what it does now that I got a dot on it. I'm digging it. It points a lot more naturally for me. Like I've mentioned before, I love Walther PDP triggers. The grip angle for me doesn't work because I'm so used to carrying a Glock. I have to constantly readjust where I'm pointing the Walther PDP. Not the case with this guy. This guy points very similar to my Glock. Slow down. I think I found a new gun for competition. This thing is really nice. So now I've got about 100 rounds through it. Yeah, I gotta say, I am really liking this gun. Yeah. So let's go back to the bench here. Back over here at the bench. So I've gone through 130 rounds so far. Zero malfunctions. The gun is running nice and smooth. I really like the trigger. Ooh, it's getting a little warm. Granted, it's only been a few minutes that I've run 130 rounds through it. I like the trigger a lot. I'm not having any issues operating with slide release, slide catch. Points naturally for me. I have not messed around with the back straps. If you're not familiar with how these work, let me pop this one off. I can get my finger in here. There we go. So the back straps are toolless interchange. They give you 3 of them. It comes with the medium one on here. They go on like, oops, missed it. There we go. They go on just like that. It's locked in place now. The iron sights, it's got a tritium front. See if I can get this on camera here. It has a tritium front with a bright green outline. The rear is a U-notch. It's typical sights that you find on Springfield Hellcats, some of their 1911s. Honestly, I kind of like their sights, especially since I don't plan on using them specifically as night sights. Any gun that I've got that's going to be potentially for a defensive use handgun, it's got a red dot on it because, like I mentioned, I don't have them here. My eyes have gone bad. Once I hit about 45, my eyesight started going, and now I need reading glasses. I can see perfectly at distance. Anything within fingertip reach is a blur. So anything I've got is going to have a red dot on it. These iron sights are usable with the red dot on here. You saw me shooting the plate rack earlier, one of the first couple of rounds out of the gun, using the irons. Sort of poorly, but I was using them. The magazines, granted, I am not out here running, sorry, there's the Season of the Flies. I'm not out here running a pistol class. I've used this mag 3 times now, and the base plate hasn't failed. That's not remotely to suggest that people aren't having legitimate base plate issues. I think once Springfield redoes, I think that's going to be an issue where they got to redo the base plates. I'll talk about that. Actually, I can point it out right here. So let me get over here to the camera. So right here at the base plate and the back of it, I don't know if you'll be able to see it there on camera, but there's a little slot, and that's what slides into the base of the, let me take this magazine apart, and it'll be a lot easier to show you. So right here on the magazine base plate, the extended base plate, there's this groove. Hopefully you can see that on camera. That is what holds this base plate on the magazine body. The magazine body at the bottom of it has very small little lips on either side that protrude, and this thing just slides onto there. It'll be a lot easier to do it without everything, all the rest of the guts. So my thought, granted, I'm a shade tree engineer. I'm not one of the guys that works for Springfield. amount of plastic that is on the outside of that slot on this extended base plate is super thin. So I think what's happening is when guys have got a full magazine with 20 rounds in it and they're inserting the mag, and the way this hits on the mag well, when you're inserting it, because of the shape of it, when they're hitting and inserting it, it wants to go that way. So I think what's happening is when they're slamming it home with a full mag, it's got a lot of pressure on those two little lips there. And then when they're cramming the mag in the mag well, I think what's happening is those lips are just expanding just slightly and allowing the base plate to come flying off. Again, my personal thoughts on the subject, I don't know if that's going to be the case. So what are my final thoughts on this thing after 130 rounds? I'm sold. I really like it. This is going to become my primary gun for like 2-gun and 3-gun competition, USPSA, and I'm betting it's probably going to end up on my it's the fan belt too. So anyway, there you go. That's my thoughts.